Good morning, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. Another Chart Addicts live stream. So, overnight, China retaliated to the tariffs that Trump had set yesterday, and President Xi had some pretty not nice words to say about President Trump. So, I'm going to sit here and read out this quote. President Xi said, word for word, he said, click the link in the description if you guys want to take your trading to the next level. He said that. All right. Good morning, everybody. Uh, so obviously there's a bit of an escalation in the tariff war between us and China. It wasn't a tariff war at first. It was just what they wanted to call reciprocal tariffs. But China decided to up the stakes, which even though we weren't really expecting from a strategy standpoint for China to retaliate this aggressively, but it was in the cards. Like we did have a final offer and a final deal that we were willing to work to, and I think that we're slowly getting there. All right. So good morning, Two Step. Good morning, Josh. Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Sandra. I'm looking here at the Zoom chat. We got a pretty stacked group here. I know we're going earlier than usual today. Let's look at the YouTube over here. Chris, good morning. I speak Spanglish. Good morning. And Devaney, good morning. All right. So yesterday we had talked about the shorts and the longs. So before we go through, and I have a few clips here that I want to show you guys from Ray Dalio. He was speaking on the tariffs. We have Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talking about these tariffs and the effects. And of course, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt did a press conference yesterday, kind of breaking down some of the biggest questions that folks have. We're going to play some of the Q&A portion that has to do with the tariff specifically. So excited to show you guys that. Okay. So yesterday, if you guys were on the Zoom call, we had this double top formation. I took a short, closed it early. One of probably the worst decision I've made all year, trading wise, closing that trade early, because then obviously we see what happened. We had this potential Model 1, but it was way too high in the range, wasn't that attractive. Market eventually came all the way back down to the golden zone. All right, so sell high, buy low. Okay, we had a beautiful rejection overnight. I did stay up pretty late to catch this, and so kind of lacking some sleep here. Okay, so I took the lows of London and Tokyo. I'm gonna say this is the low of London down here, and then drew my fib from low to high. So all I'm waiting for is basically a double bottom, pretty close to that golden zone over here. We're about an hour away from market open. So once market opens, we'll probably see that spike down, get a pretty good retest, and that should be our trade for the day. All right. Let's first listen in on Caroline Leavitt. Let's hear what the White House official statement is, and then we'll get Ray Dalio's take, obviously one of the best economists in the world. And then we have Secretary Treasury Scott Bessent, who are both going to give their takes about China's escalation here. Okay. So Caroline Leavitt is asked about the effects of the retaliatory tariffs, and this was her response. Let me know if the audio comes in clear. Let me unplug this HDMI first. Okay.
Administration doing stop grants funding of terrorist aggression worldwide that the previous administration
How are we doing on audio, folks?
wasn't doing.
Well, first of all, when it comes to Saturday, I won't get ahead of the president. He has
Awesome.
said
Thanks,
there will
Sandra.
be direct talks with Iran on Saturday. I won't further any details from this podium for obvious reasons, security reasons. It will, provide an update as we always have. However, when it comes to Iran, the president has reimposed crippling sanctions on the Iranian regime, and he's made it very clear to Iran they have a choice to make. You can strike a deal with the president, you can negotiate, or there will be hell to pay. And as the president said yesterday, if they don't
I do want to preface this by saying, like, even though there's a scalp opportunity here, I'm seeing sellers remain in control for the short term. So there's a pretty good chance that we break through. Just to kind of break down what to look for in today's session. So we established a low, and then we started to have this kind of like this bullish impulse, showing that buyers are stepping back into the markets. Then we started establishing a higher floor last night. This was right at the 88.6. So we went from a series of lower lows, just lower lows, lower lows, lower lows, and then now we're starting to see the makings, like maybe of a higher low. Okay, so this could be a potential shift in market momentum. Now, this isn't really like too relevant. The lows are really the most relevant thing, but we started establishing highs, and then now we have a higher high. And so what we're looking for is for price to continue this pattern, to continue this shift in momentum by creating a new higher floor. Okay. If we close below these lows, then there's a very good chance that the market continues bearish for the remainder of the session. If we can close above the Asia session lows, kind of like where we have our buy entry over here, then this could actually be a pretty good trade to go all the way back up to the top of the range. All right, so very simply, if we close below the Asia lows, we got a whole lot more downside to go. And if we can respect the Asia lows for support and take this buy over here, get this move to the upside, then we can make it all the way back up to the top of the range. Okay, so that closure is going to be crucial. We still have another hour till market open, so let's keep an eye on that. Put a 1 in the chat if you guys are clear on that. Very straightforward stuff.
choose to move forward with diplomacy and a deal, which is the direction we do see them headed in, there will be grave consequences to pay. The back row.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Caroline. On the president's threat yesterday on social media to increase tariffs against China by an additional 50% in response to their retaliation, has he signed anything in terms of an executive order, any documentation around that? Will that additional 50% go into effect tomorrow?
They will be going into effect at 12:01 a.m. tonight, so effectively tomorrow. Yeah.
So that was this morning. So this is the first day that we have these tariffs, guys. 25% tariffs and then raising it an additional 50%. I'm struggling to understand how this is even feasible. Like, is an iPhone going to be $3,000? Are soybeans going to all of a sudden go up 75% in price when we export them to China? This is kind of the dangerous game that we're playing here, where if both sides don't sit down at the negotiating table, then this could get really, really ugly. So let's see what Caroline says.
Yes,
Work on that today?
of course, as always. To the gentleman in front of you, because that's who I originally called on. Go ahead.
Over the weekend, President Trump said that he would be willing to have U.S. citizens deported to El Salvador with the cooperation of President Bukele. How would that work legally, and how many people would potentially be available for that operation?
So the president has discussed this idea quite a few times publicly. He's also discussed it privately. You're referring to the president's idea for American citizens to potentially be deported. These would be heinous, violent criminals who have broken our nation's laws repeatedly. And these are violent repeat offenders in American streets. The president has said if it's legal, right? If there is a legal pathway to do that, he's not sure. We are not sure if there is. It's an idea that he has simply floated and has discussed very publicly as in the effort of transparency. Reagan.
Thank you, Caroline. There's been more reporting coming out now about President Biden's decline while in the White House. Is the White House considering releasing the audio of Biden's interview with special counsel Robert Hur to the public, which the former president had previously blocked?
All right, they're just asking about stuff to do with Biden. I think I had one more clip here.
Can you reveal that yet? Give us details on what it was about?
There has been a discovery. I hate to leave you hanging on a cliff, but I don't want to get ahead of. I was calling on the young lady behind
Today with House Republicans. Can you say who is in that meeting?
The Republicans received an overwhelming mandate from the American Public Service Administration officials, myself included. There have been nearly 70 countries that have reached out to the administration last.
That you guys can name publicly that your husband is prioritizing.
Okay, so they're naming the list of countries that are kind of, I don't know if to call it the hit list, but they're on the tariff list. There's I think a list of 70 countries that they're listing. And so I think she's answering questions about who those countries are and what the nature of that list is.
Talks with Japan and South Korea, other trading partners. Are there other countries on that list that you guys can name publicly that you're having serious discussions with?
Sure. As you have heard from various administration officials, myself included, there have been nearly 70 countries that have reached out to the administration last time I checked. But again, I hear the phones are ringing off the hook. There are foreign leaders who want to fly to Washington tonight and get on a plane to negotiate with this country, which shows you the leverage that the president is using. That shows you the rest of the world needs the United States of America to do business with. Israel, obviously, yesterday, you heard a public statement from Prime Minister Netanyahu. The president has detailed his calls with the leaders of Japan and South Korea. We are going to prioritize our allies and our partners around the world first when it comes to these negotiations, and the trade team will be divvying them up again to make tailor-made trade deals around the world. Ed, go
So
ahead.
you
As
mentioned,
promised.
yes, thank you. You mentioned the 70 countries or so. I'm curious though, under what conditions at this point would President Trump talk to President Xi about tariffs?
Look, I just spoke to the president about this, and he believes that China wants to make a deal with the United States. He believes China has to make a deal with the United States. It was a mistake for China to retaliate. The president, when America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on.
So I think they were expecting that. So kind of to go back on that first point is this wasn't their first case scenario that China would retaliate this aggressively, but I think they definitely had a few cards ready in case this scenario happened because they're saying that it's a mistake. They're saying that China has to negotiate. That means that the cards are in our favor. So when it all settles and we kind of look at the trade, the balance of trade, which is something that I actually have pulled up here. If my computer, oh, it glitched out. What just happened? Uh-oh. Oh no. What just happened? All right, are we back? Check, 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 check. Okay. Hopefully we're good. My computer just glitched out. I think I have way too many tabs open.
On China tonight at midnight, but the president believes that Xi and China want to make a deal. They just don't know how to get that started. And the president also wanted me to tell all of you that if China reaches out to make a deal, he'll be incredibly gracious, but he's going to do what's best for the American people.
So China has to call first?
The Chinese want to make a deal. They just don't know how to do it, but the president will be implementing these 104% tariffs on China
And
tonight.
under what conditions might he consider lowering tariffs on China at this point?
It would be imprudent of me to tell you those conditions here from the podium. Sure, Gabe.
Thanks, Caroline.
She's a breath of fresh air compared to the last administration. We're
With regards to the
getting answers, which is insane.
Supreme Court ruling on the Alien Enemies Act, you're right, it was a win for the administration, but the justices also said that deportees are entitled to due process. Does the administration agree with that?
That's not quite true, Gabe. They said that they are.
All right, this is we're going to come back to the beginning of this. There are some really important things here relating to our relationships with countries in South America, Iran escalations, Israel, etc. And so we're going to get back to this, but let's listen to what Ray Dalio has to say about these tariffs. All right, so we have two clips here. As much as I fucking hate Andrew Ross Sorkin, we just got demonetized instantly. Andrew Ross Sorkin pisses me off, but Ray Dalio, absolute legend. Let's see what he's got to say.
A lot of folks' wealth vanished overnight as a function of at least this discussion thus far. So what happens?
Well, mechanistically, it raises costs. It lowers revenues for companies. I mean, what does it mean for a company? It means costs are going to go up, revenue is going to go down, and capital is going to be harder to come by. And so, and then we're trying to replace manufacturing. I mean, I agree with the problems, okay, about the fact that we don't manufacture and that there is a problem with that. But there's a structural problem of whether we can manufacture. We have a population that basically 3 million people, 1% of the population, is incredibly brilliant. I mean, they go to the best schools, they come out, they make the unicorns, inventiveness, half of which, by the way, are foreigners. And at the same time, they are making the unicorns. At the same time, what we have is 10% of the population around them that's doing very well. The 60% of the population has below a 6th grade reading level. And it's tough to be productive.
Hold on, say that again.
60% of the population has below a 6th grade reading level.
60% of the population has below a 6th grade reading level. People, did I just hear that correctly? Is that even true? I'm looking this up on my phone. Hold on, give me a second. That can't be true. I'm looking up US demographics by grade level. Approximately 46% of US adults between the ages of 16 and 74 can read above a 6th grade level. Wow. Wow. Dude, that is fucking crazy. Did you guys know this? 60% of the country can't read past the 6th grade reading level. Yo, son, this is why China's coming up. Pick up a book.
Going now. I'm very happy to say that.
Hold on, not your turn, Morning Joe. We got Andrew Ross Sorkin here first. Let's listen to Ray Dalio. That was a bombshell. I don't know what to do with that information.
And it's tough to be productive. So when we agree with the problem, too much debt, Secretary Bennis and others agree we should get it down to 3%. We have to get the budget deficits down to 3% of GDP. This is not, we all agree on the problem. The question is, what do we do about it? How do you create that self-sufficiency? And so from a practical point of view, that manufacturing is very difficult under this set of circumstances to create within the United States, yet it's needed.
So therefore, you agree with the president? You disagree with the president? I'm trying to understand what the conclusion is here. If the president is watching you right now, if Scott Bessent is watching you right now, you're telling him.
So this is one of those like just straightforward, cut through the BS kind of questions, because Ray Dalio kind of speaks this is how economists speak: is always leave the door open for different scenarios so that you don't really speak in absolutes. But he's kind of trying to press Ray Dalio here about like giving a definite answer about. If they called you, if they're on the phone right now, what would you tell them? And this is a pretty good interview question when talking to economists. In my interview with Bob Elliott on our channel, you guys can see I use that a few times. I'm like, look, if Jerome Powell calls you right now, what would be your advice to him? And I think that kind of cuts through all the data that they're trying to describe and kind of just gives you one definite answer, and which sometimes they haven't even really got to.
What? This is a good idea. You're telling him about. If the president is watching you right now, Scott Bessent is watching you right now, you're telling him what? This is a good idea. You're telling him abandon this idea. What are you saying?
I agree with the problem. Okay. I am very concerned about the solution. Okay. The practicality of the solution. In other words, I think that this is going to create not only the problem, the capital markets problem that I'm talking about related to prices going up, costs going up, prices, revenue going down, and capital problem. But I also think that this is going to create great sand in the gears of production worldwide. At the same time, I do agree that this interdependency, this issue of productivity in the world in which we have to be competitive and productive, and we're not competitive in producing things, is a longer term problem, not an easy one. And I do expect that it is going to have political consequences. This is the nature of the cycle. It is coming.
So you guys can see, like, he's not even taking a side. He's not saying that these tariffs are good or bad, or like that's such a simple way to think about the world, which really is not effective, especially as a trader or an investor. You have to see the world, at least in the, in terms of money, in a mechanistic way, like mechanically, which means that there are functions that you can measure. There are reactions to every action that you can kind of predict. So if I pull this lever, this is going to happen over here. And what he's saying is this is going to drive costs up, because if producers and manufacturers are going to start paying more in their supply chains to get the products here to America, then they're going to pass that cost on to us. And it's only a matter of time, matter of months before those costs start to reflect at the stores, which is going to be a problem. But he also said that us being so dependent on China and these other countries and not having domestic manufacturing is a way bigger problem. He said that's something that's catastrophic long term. So he's kind of just listing like we're fucked no matter. It's a hard place. It's a rock and a hard place. But if you really kind of weigh those two, which is like giving China, which is somebody who's kind of an adversary, the ability to shut off your entire country because they own your manufacturing, they own the production, they own the most important things that we all need, like medicines and raw materials and food, right? That seems way more dangerous than, let's just say eggs going up $1. Like there is going to be short-term inflation for sure. But in the long term, this is the best for the country. So, he's kind of he's not really ranking them that way. That's my assessment of it. But yeah.
Also, at the same time as we have a budget issue. Now, the budget issue.
We had about 15 minutes and like just 10 minutes shy of an hour until market open. We're probably going to see a pre-market pump to the upside right at the market open. Ideally, we get a retest right into our zone. And so that direction of the first pump is going to be like the true direction of the trend, or at least like for the first half of New York session. And so we're going to see that fake out to the upside, ideally, and then we'll get a retest at market open. If the market flashes bearish before the market open, that's going to be the first direction. Then it will, so if it closes below prior to market open, then we'll see a sharp retest right at 9:30 and a continuation for the shorts. Okay, so right now it kind of looks like it's showing bullish. And so as it stands, our markup is still valid.
Is a comparably important issue. So as we look ahead in the months ahead, we have to get the budget deficit down to 3% of GDP. I worry about that at the same time as this is happening. These are not easy problems to solve. I'm concerned because the bigger problems exist. The debt exists. You can't get around the debt.
All right, went through these two. Let's listen to Scott Bessent, Secretary of the Treasury.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent this morning. Mr. Secretary, it's a pleasure to have you on. It's been a while. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Joe.
Market is trading higher today, and we did see what was welcomed yesterday, and that is a bounce from some of the lows and even a higher close on the NASDAQ. One of our guests, Mr. Secretary, earlier mentioned the resumption of the trade put, and not coincidentally, it coincided with your trip to Florida over the weekend, where reportedly you were stressing that the market needed to hear that negotiations about these tariffs were in play. Lo and behold, we did see a bounce. Is that a fair assessment? Do you think that's what happened? We're approaching.
That was such a kiss-ass question. He's like, look, I know something about trading too. More Joe. Come on, Joe. Don't forget people who Scott Bessent is. This is you're looking at the top traders. You're looking at this is somebody I'm trying to interview. This is who I want to get a podcast with. Crashing the Bank of England, Black Wednesday. There was a like a historical tragedy. There was a day of mourning named after the actions of this man when they shorted the British pound. $1 billion trade, Black Wednesday. All right. So if y'all are mad about blowing your last account or that $50 you spent on a challenge and it didn't go your way, yeah, the Bank of England crashed. They named a day of mourning after these people. Think bigger. That's a lesson for today.
Japan, I guess, was early in terms of placing a call to the White House. And now, in earnest, you and the U.S. Trade Representative are going to begin negotiations with Japan. I think that some of the stability in the markets, there's no doubt that's what I think helped massage the markets to some extent.
Well, look, Joe, my excuse me, my advice on April 2nd to our trading partners was not to panic, don't escalate, and then we will see where President Trump is after a period of days or weeks. The response was overwhelming, so it was after a period of days, and
China did not get that message.
He decided that it would be a good time to begin negotiating. The Japanese were very good actors. The president had a very good call yesterday with the Japanese prime minister that led to these negotiations. And look, the Japanese are military partners, they're economic partners. We have a substantial imbalance with them, and I'm sure that they are as anxious as we are to get this remedied.
Mr. Secretary, we spoke yesterday with the Peter Navarro, and he described his view on these things as it's not enough to get to zero tariffs. You have to take down all the non-tariff barriers that exist as well. His proposal, as he's written about today, is to get rid of the VAT, the value-added tax on top of a lot of other things, that is what it would take for us to reach any sort of a settlement with Europe. Are you in the same frame of mind as Peter Navarro is when it comes to that?
Becky, I think everything's on the table. So they're tariffs. The academic literature shows that it's actually the non-tariff barriers, which are both harder to quantify and harder to, they're more insidious because they're hidden, they're obfuscated. So tariffs, non-tariff barriers, currency manipulation, and then subsidies to both labor and industries.
Did someone say currency manipulation?
So everything's on the table, Becky.
Meaning that it would take all of those things for us to reach any agreement that would make any sense. I mean, the value added tax isn't directed at us. It's a tax that every manufacturer, including those that are based in Europe, pay as well. It's more the equivalent of a sales tax like we impose here.
Well, again, I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth. President Trump is going to be personally involved in the negotiations, and we will see what our trading partners offer. For instance, there is talk of a big energy deal in Alaska where the Japanese and perhaps the Koreans, perhaps the Taiwanese would take a lot of the offtake and provide financing for the deal. So, that could be an alternative for them to come forward with that, because not only would that provide a lot of American jobs, but it would narrow the trade deficit. So, Becky, everything's on the table.
Mr. Secretary, though, help us just understand this, and maybe it's a very nuanced answer because there's sort of a different component parts to this. So the president said yesterday with Netanyahu, quote, that these tariffs can be permanent tariffs and there can also be negotiations. We also had Peter Navarro, as Becky mentioned, and you just talked about, saying that the whole goal of this is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. And then there's been the discussion of trying to raise revenue as a function of the tariffs. All of those different ideas, to some degree, oddly enough, are at odds with each other. Meaning, if you're successful at creating revenue from the tariffs, you're not bringing jobs back to America necessarily, though that could be an offshoot of what happens. I'm trying to understand from your perspective whether these really are negotiations, they're not negotiations, what success at the end of the day actually looks like.
Well, Andrew, that lot to unpack there, and let's just go through it piece by piece. That if we put up a tariff wall, the ultimate goal would be to bring jobs back to the U.S. But in the meantime, we will be collecting substantial tariffs. As I said, I believe on this show that if we're successful, tariffs would be a melting ice cube in a way, because you're taking in the revenues as the manufacturing facilities are built in the U.S. And there should be some level of symmetry between the taxes we begin taking in with the new industry from the payroll taxes as the tariff.
So I'm just going to sum this up. This is what we talked about last time, which is in the short term, we're going to be making money from the tariffs. This is extra bonus money that's going to be on top of whatever the federal budget is. Over time, as companies start to realize they don't want to pay this tariff anymore, and it's just cheaper to come to America and manufacture here, then we're going to start to see the benefit of those increase in jobs. Like Scott Besson just said, the payroll, folks getting paid, taxes coming out of those payrolls, expenses, just people spending at the grocery stores, people spending that money back into the economy. And so we're going to start to see that benefit. So we're going to start to lose the money from the tariffs slowly. But at the same time, in equal proportion, hopefully, this is the gamble, right? As we're losing the money from the tariffs, we'll be gaining the money from the production in America, the jobs, the manufacturing, the exports, and they should even each other out. The gamble is, will they happen at the same time? Because if we lose the tariff money way too quick and we don't get the production fast enough, we're going to be in for a pretty rough ride. But as far as everything is concerned, it looks like we're going to be on track here. NASDAQ is pumping a little bit more aggressively than I thought it would pre-market, but I think this is just even more confirmation for that bullish pump after the market open. And so just keep in mind, we have a little bit under half an hour until the market open. I'm looking for a sharp correction down right at 9:30, right down as close to the double bottom as we can get. And then ideally we can trade this thing up for a double top. All right, if this thing breaks these previous highs before the market even opens, then we'll be looking for something like this. It'll be a continuation pattern, about 60% retracement. We'll talk about that later. Okay. So let's listen to Scott Besson. He's going to break down the rest of this info. Someone asked about 30-year bonds. We can talk about that a little bit, but it's early in the morning. I'm not trying to put folks to sleep already. All right. Maybe I'll roast a couple people first, then we get to treasury bonds. Get a little warm up first, you know what I'm saying? All right, let's finish this up. Actually, I'm pretty sure Scott's about to go into the treasury yield. So this is this for you.
Earth decline.
Mhm. Let me ask you a separate question, and maybe you can speak directly to the CEOs and business leaders who are watching this broadcast, along with perhaps policy leaders and others who are frankly running other countries. I've talked to a number of them who say, you know what, I'm going to sit back and just watch all of this play out. I'm not going to make any decisions about whether I'm going to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. or frankly, how much I need to negotiate with this administration. This is now other countries just yet, because depending on how the markets play out, depending on what you think is going to happen in Congress, depending on what you think is going to happen with the courts, all sorts of other things could happen first before I would need to make an actual decision as to either negotiating over the tariffs themselves or if I'm a business.
I'm just going to go ahead and answer this. If any country thinks that Trump is bluffing, they're in for a wake-up call. I'm just going to put it that way. This is the first administration I've seen in my lifetime that does what they say they're going to do. Whether you agree with their plans or not, Trump is not out here bluffing. He's been talking about this trade imbalance for about 40 years. I found clips back in fucking David Letterman and him talking about this is Trump talking about the trade imbalances between us and other countries and how we're getting ripped off and how America needs to get back to the dominant position on the global stage. 40 years. You think he's bluffing? Yeah, let's. I think Andrew Ross Sorkin is just making that shit up because this is what journalists do nowadays. All right, I'm just gonna break down the journalist playbook for you guys. All right, demystify the boogeyman here. They'll be like, many experts are saying, but which fucking experts? If a couple guys in the office went on ChatGPT, who's the expert? They'd be like, well, a lot of people have been saying that you guys have been too aggressive in your trade. Who's a lot of people, bro? I didn't hear this. It sounds like you. It sounds like you're the people. I haven't heard this criticism from anywhere else. It sounds like you're making this up right now. And so this is kind of what Andrew Ross Sorkin's doing.
This investing back in the U.S. because who knows what's going to happen, not just in 6 months from now, but in 2, 3, or 5 years from now when maybe my plant would actually come on board or online.
Yeah, so Andrew, that I countries are saying in public, but I can tell you I've seen the call list at the White House and it's substantial. We were having a discussion last night about which countries to prioritize.
That's a good problem to have. Last thing I'll say here is when we have so many countries calling, trying to make deals about the tariffs, that we have to sit here and spend time prioritizing which countries to hit first, which countries to prioritize above others. That's a good problem to have. It's too much, like just too much motion on your hands. We have an administration with motion, bro. The country is back. That whole shit, make America great again. They're actually doing it. Now, are there mistakes being made along the way, and are they being kind of blown out of, not to say out of proportion? Some of them are pretty fucked, but like, are they being blown way out of proportion in the media to try to attack Trump at every point? Yes. Are there going to be mistakes made when you're dealing with, like, let's say millions of people? Yes. But in terms of 70 plus countries on the phone calling, trying to renegotiate these archaic trade deals to put us back in a dominant position so we don't lose America's dominance. to China or to, let's say, BRICS or another coalition.
And I think you are going to see some very large countries with large trade deficits come forward very quickly. I think we can, if they come to the table with solid proposals, I think we can end up with some good deals. And, part of the calculus on that may be that some part of the tariffs stay on. And I actually think, as I said, that over the weekend, President Trump has maximum negotiating leverage right here, right now. And I think it would be a mistake for anyone to think otherwise. And many of
I mean, he's just trying to remind the world that we have the cards. When you have the world's reserve currency, when you have the opportunity and the deregulation that's going to happen here, when you have all, like, he knows, as the Treasury Secretary, he knows what's let's say not the predictions, the forecasts for how the productivity growth is going to evolve under this new regime. He's telling everybody, he's like, we have the cards. And if these guys want to play tough, they're not going to win. I like this. People, you want your team. And I don't care what country you're in. Let this be a lesson for you and your leaders. You want your team to be this confident. Not even confident. He's speaking with certainty. Little kids, boys are confident. Men are certain. Men know. And these guys, they're not out here competing in a game that they know that they don't know they're going to win. They know they're going to win. And that's why the specific numbers that they're negotiating with, they're starting high so they can kind of work their way back down. Where this is all going to end up and how this is going to play in America's favor. By the time the dust settles, we'll have enough kind of strength back to be able to handle or weather the storm of whatever comes next. So this is the kind of confidence we've been looking for, man. I'm excited. I hope you guys are too.
As I said, many of our trading partners, they have queued up and they have kept their cool. They have not escalated and they will get priority in the queue. I think it was a big mistake, this Chinese escalation, because
called it a mistake.
They're playing with a pair of twos. Traditionally, if you look at the history of the trade negotiations, we are the deficit country. So what do we lose by the Chinese raising tariffs on us? We export 1/5 to them of what they export to us. So that is a losing hand for them.
What about the business leaders who are watching?
So to break it down, it's like, oh yeah, you don't want to, how do I say this? Like, we're their number one customer. We're buying all the stuff from them. So like, imagine you're a store owner and you only have one customer. And the customer also is one of your wholesalers. Like, they also sell you stuff. And they're like, yeah, we got to raise some prices on the vegetables that we're selling you. And the store owner is like, oh yeah, well, we're just going to tax you on everything. And then the only customer that they have just stops buying from them or buys less. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. These retaliatory tariffs really hurt China way more because they're paying the majority bulk of this because they're trying to import into the US. We're not really exporting much into China. There's some mechanical stuff. There's steel, there's coal, there's soybeans, right? But in the grand scheme of things, you guys just heard Scott Besson, 5-to-1 like balance of trade ratio. And we got to get that way more even. That's giving your enemy. I don't want to consider China an enemy. Let's just call the Chinese government an adversarial government. And you don't want to give an adversarial government the ability to shut down your supply chains or to shut down your entire country's production.
Right now, who are thinking to themselves, am I supposed to actually make a commitment right now to bring manufacturing back to the US, or should I let this ride and watch all of this play out first before I make any kind of decision?
Well, and Andrew, as you know, unlike we financial market operators, business leaders, they have substantial lead times. So I am sure that they are putting together plans for what they would like to do when we finish these negotiations. So I think, again, they're not going to snap their fingers, find a greenfield site and build a factory, but I am sure that the planning has already started in boardrooms because I spent the weekend talking to CEOs and investment bankers, and that's exactly what's happening.
Mr. Secretary, the actual tariff rate on Japan is 4.3%. The number that President Trump's chart used was 46%. There has been a lot of conversation about how some of the numbers were arrived at, and using that formula, which puts a lot of weight on trade deficits to try to take into account all of the other protectionist policies. But was there? I mean, there was kind of a lot of blowback.
Bro, they keep making so much, like they've been talking so much about this formula, making it seem like it's so crazy, and that we've never seen this before, and this is not a formula that's found in any textbook or whatever. It's imports minus exports divided by I think it's divided by imports. Or no, it's divided by wait. Tariff formula. All right, this is where I need the AI. Let's see. Man, ain't nobody signing up for no New York Times with it. Oh, okay. So it's exports minus imports. It's something like this. So basically, what they were trying to do is find the imbalance in trade, which is like your net exports or your net imports. And that's how you find whether you have a trade surplus or a trade deficit with a country. And then they basically divided that to find a ratio. And that's the ratio that they used in order to figure out how much to charge these countries in order to balance out that deficit, right? To get that balance of trade back in order. So they're making it seem like it's like the craziest thing in the world. It actually makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, most of it is going to get thrown out the window anyways. The countries will negotiate, the numbers will change, and we will rehash the entire list that they're talking about. Is there a chance that NASDAQ has left the station? Possibly. All right, but I remain optimistic. I'm waiting for that correction, see if we can get that retest and enter after the market open.
On that formula. Do you think that accurately represents what we're talking about, or was it an actual intentional effort to make things look worse in terms of the protectionism so that the United States, so President Trump could start at a much higher level for the retaliatory tariff?
Well, Joe, a couple of things. I think if you look at the actual numbers, President Trump cut those in half. So, if we wanted to create a canard to have a large negotiator, a non-credible or, a the very extended negotiating position, we would have started from the actual number. And I believe that, by cutting it in half, then we're at we have shown some willingness. President Trump believes in trade. He wants to have fair trade for the U.S. I wasn't involved in the calculations of the numbers, but what I can tell you is that we can see from these huge surpluses that some of these countries have, they've accumulated these gigantic surpluses over the years. That has to tell all of us that there are imbalances. And again, whether those imbalances are from the actual tariffs or non-tariff barriers, currency manipulation, or the state-favored funding, it's very difficult to disentangle. But those big surpluses tell me that there is a large imbalance, and President Trump is.
It is kind of rich from America to be talking about currency manipulation after having printed tens of $trillions during COVID and kind of forcing the rest of the world to go on a printing spree. Yeah,
Committed.
The country with the printing press talking about currency manipulation. But hey, they know what they're talking about. They know what China's doing behind the scenes.
For the American worker to fixing those imbalances.
We're going to let you go, Mr. Secretary. I just wanted to shift a little bit to the notion that maybe in trying to extend the tax cuts from the 2017 bill, that maybe the top rate, that there's some openness with Republicans to raising that, letting that go back to over 39 or even 40%. And I don't know whether the president has signed off on that or whether he's amenable to it. I don't know whether you would be amenable to that, because it would raise the taxes on all kinds of small to medium-sized corporations if it went back there. Is that being considered?
Joe, what I will tell you is I along with NEC Chair Hassett, they have the pen for the administration. We're in contact with President Trump. We have seen remarkable unity led by the president with the Republican leaders, with Leader Thune, Speaker Johnson, Senator Crapo, and Chairman Jason Smith on this bill, and it's moving very quickly. So I think the underreported story here is the Republican unity that President Trump has. I think we will see the shapes and.
That was the most politician shit ever. But that wasn't even the question. I even forgot what the question was.
With President Trump,
the president has signed off on that, to raising that, letting that, trying to extend the tax cuts from the 2017 bill, that maybe the shift a little bit to the notion that maybe in trying to extend the tax cuts from the 2017 bill, that maybe the top rate, that there's some openness with Republicans to raising that, letting that go back to over 39 or even 40%. And I don't know whether the president has signed off on that or whether he's amenable to it. I don't know whether you would be amenable to that, because it would raise the taxes on all kinds of small to medium-sized corporations if it went back there. Is that being considered?
Joe, what I will tell you is I along with NEC Chair Hassett, they have the pen for the administration. We're in contact with President.
All right, keep in mind the question is about corporate taxes for small and medium-sized businesses. That was the question.
Trump. We have seen remarkable unity led by the president with the Republican leaders, with Leader Thune, Speaker Johnson, Senator Crapo, and Chairman Jason Smith on this bill, and it's moving very quickly. So I think the underreported story here is the Republican unity.
So he's talking about Republican unity. He's talking about this bill that they're trying to pass. But he's not answering about the contents of this bill, that corporate taxes will go up on small to medium-sized businesses, such as us. If you're a trader and you're trading through an LLC, this directly affects you. I'm sitting here giving himself a pat on the back instead of answering the question. Scott, answer the damn question.
that President Trump has. And I think we will see the shapes and contours of the bill in the coming weeks and days, but I have been very impressed by how quickly this is moving forward. And this will be the certainty on this. If we go back, everyone wants to talk about, oh, the tariffs are causing uncertainty. Thing I can tell you is getting this tax bill done quickly will give industry and American households incredible certainty.
It just seems anathema to the whole intent of the original bill back in 2017. And I mean, tariffs are like taxes to some extent, Mr. Secretary. So raising taxes there and then raising taxes the top rate. So you won't dismiss that. You won't say that that's not on the table. That is possibly on the table. Raising the top rate.
I'm saying that we are negotiating. The House and the Senate are moving on everything.
Okay, Mr. Secretary.
All right, so this is the type of shit I keep telling you guys about, where I supported Trump, and then this kind of shit happens. In 2017, the whole goal of the tax cuts was to relieve tax cuts on middle and lower class. That was the entire objective. This extension of that tax cut is going to raise the marginal tax rate up to 40% on the high end. And I'm not really sure what he said somewhere in the middle, but it sounds like taxes are going to go up for small to medium-sized businesses. So that's something I'm going to definitely take a look at. And also, and this kind of like smug grin that Scott Bessent has, which is like, I know something you don't, and we basically already got this thing in the bag. I don't like that, because I just found out about this, and clearly it doesn't make any sense. But you're about to basically like spike this football. You're getting ready to do the fucking celebration run. All right, let's see what we got here. Do we have Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce? Howard Lutnick on tariffs. Let's go. 2 days ago, nothing on China. Nothing on China. Eesh. That was an aggressive title. I'm not even going to be able to repeat that. Tariffs could go up. Ways and Means Chair, Representative Smith, President. The House Ways and Means Committee. All right. Let's see what we got. Help YouTube by answering one question. How about you play
Day
my
two
video?
Of testimony on Capitol Hill for U.S. Trade
About that.
Representative Jameson Greer. He'll be in front of the Ways and Means Committee today answering questions about President Trump's.
Make sure to drop a like on the stream if you guys are watching this on YouTube, and check out the link in the description. Check out the masterclass. If you guys are a previous student or you guys have taken the masterclass before, check your email. Special surprise in there for you. If you've already registered for the class, check your email about the full schedule starting this Friday, and let's get ready for the best one yet.
Tariffs. Joining us now, Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith. Is he gonna? It was yesterday. He got
15 minutes till market open, so we are getting a pretty good rejection here. Looking likely for this correction right at the market open. So I want to see a spike to the downside, come back to that ideal entry zone, 16,711. Should be pretty easy to remember here. Yeah. That's what we're waiting on. 15 minutes. Keep our eye on the ball here. And of course, 2 p.m. today, Eastern time, later in the second half of New York, we have FOMC meeting minutes. So the full transcript of the conversations that were had during the last FOMC meeting, where they decided not to cut or increase rates. Obviously, they're not going to have really the full discussion on paper at this point. I think a lot of the discussions are happening outside of that meeting, but full meeting minutes, typically there's a lot of volatility, surrounding that. There's a consolidation, and then there's going to be a big whipsaw surrounding that news, even though it's kind of irrelevant. So keep an eye out for that. If you're going to be trading, first half of New York, try to get your bag and get out. Second half will be a mess.
some pushback and some tough questions. Is it coming from both sides of the aisle, Mr. Chairman?
I would expect, Joe, that today in the House Ways and Means Committee, he'll have some tough questions as well from both sides. This is the opportunity for the administration to plead their case in regards to their trade policy. So Jameson's in the middle of everything, and he'll be able to answer to members of Congress today.
I don't know if you saw Congressman Bacon and Gottheimer on. There's no way you get to a 2/3. I can't see that happening, but is there some angst and uneasiness in the ranks, the Republican ranks, for what's happening in the stock market or the way that the tariff issue is being litigated?
Well, this is definitely uncharted water, especially since the 4 years you saw the prior administration out to lunch when it came to trade policy. They did absolutely nothing. And so that is causing some uncertainty. But the only thing that the prior administration virtually kept intact of the Trump presidency in his first term was his China tariffs. That was literally the only thing that they reaffirmed. Now, when you look at what the president's trying to do, he's doing exactly what he campaigned on. He campaigned on delivering these tariffs. It was no secret about it, so no one should be surprised. He says countries been taking advantage of the United States for a long time, and they have been. I would disagree with my colleagues that you were talking with earlier. They were talking about we should make sure that the European Union is straightened out and we don't address it. The European Union is the reason why we have an agriculture trade deficit in America. We have a $32 billion agriculture trade deficit with the European Union, and we have a $32 billion agriculture deficit in the world. That is unacceptable. But why is that, Joe? Why is that? Honduras purchases more pork from us, a country of 10 million people, than the entire European Union of 450 people. Angola purchases more chicken from us than the entire European Union, and they have a GDP 200% less. 200% less than the European Union. Give me a break.
Guess who's in charge of that? It's Congress. I hate when these people get up here and do this stuff where they're like, this is unacceptable behavior. What the fuck are you doing about it? Because you're in charge. Fix it. And really the reason that America is not exporting more agriculture is because America subsidizes three main agricultural exports. It's soybeans, it's corn, and I forgot what the third one was. Yeah, really corn and soy. And so they're paying farmers not to grow other stuff and to grow this. That way we can export it to other countries. And so if we had a more balance, if we had more, what I would say, like not even more, less government interference in markets, then the balance of supply and demand would naturally work itself out. The free market is pretty fucking smart. But this is the thing about, it's fucking socialists and communists. It's ego, man. It's narcissism. It's fuck the free market, fuck the natural flow. God did not create this system correctly. I know how to do this better. Let me sit there and play God instead, create a new balance of trade, an artificial and synthetic balance of trade by subsidizing soy and corn and then exporting those to these different countries and then using that as a negotiating tool instead of just allowing the free market to allow, let's say, more meat products or farmers or whoever else to flourish here in America. That's my take. And then you have this dipshit sitting here. You're the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. And you're like, this is unacceptable and Honduras buys more than Europe. Deregulate. Maybe we can make more stuff. But no. Bureaucracy. Goofy fucking purple tie. All right. Look, who does this guy think? You're not fucking Jay Leno. Who does this guy think he is?
We had a mini brouhaha yesterday between a couple of presidents. I don't know what you'd call them. One's a kind of a non-official part of the administration, Elon Musk, and then you've got a trade advisor, Peter Navarro. But it does sort of highlight what we've seen the president getting buffeted between two camps, it seems like. And depending on which camp seems to be in favor, the stock market goes one way or the other. When we talk negotiations, we have 70, Scott Bessent was on yesterday, the Treasury Secretary. When he mentioned that, market happy up 1,400 points. Immediately when we hear no negotiations or the Navarro side of things, we get back into what is actually fairly troubling for a lot of Americans. Congressman, Mr. Chairman, and about 2 years from now, what would happen too if we continue down this path? Does it concern you in terms of what's going to happen in the midterms?
Joe, first off, there's always family feuds in every family, in every business. There's disagreements. That happens quite often. What I'm excited about is the president. The president is a negotiator. Negotiating. And so for people to not believe that the president of the United States is going to negotiate with all these countries,
this guy's got like a real Bill Maher thing going on. You guys gonna catch my drift? He's got a big Bill Maher kind of thing going on.
That's oceanfront property in Missouri to sell them. He is absolutely negotiating.
Okay.
He is thrilled that 70
helps.
different countries has came forward.
The negotiation can't help when we hear that, but then a lot of times hopes are then dashed a half hour later by a tweet from the president or by comments from the other faction. Can I ask you about yeah, go ahead.
So, Joe, what I will say is that a lot of people get distracted because the president talks about all the revenues that's going to come from the tariffs. He's talking about the revenue that's going to come from the tariffs of the countries that's not willing to negotiate. That's where the revenue tariff's going to come. The countries that then come in and treat us fairly, then we're going to make an agreement.
You mean that, so we have tariffs on them, and then when the imports come in, it's people here that are paying the tariffs, aren't they? Mr. Chairman, what do you mean the countries are paying the tariff?
The people here also pay by losing their jobs in rural America when those factories close because of unfair trade practices.
Who's paying the actual tariff? The money that the president always says he's collecting, where's he getting that? The countries aren't paying that to the Treasury.
It's the.
Whoa. He just exposed the entire tariff scam. They're saying they're going to get $6 trillion over 10 years. But if that money is being paid by U.S. companies, or if that's being paid by U.S. citizens to import, really the goal is to start exporting more. That's the whole goal. But for now, we're a net importer, meaning that the U.S. consumer is going to be paying those tariffs. So we're subsidizing this entire tariff. Bro, this is not, they said this is the External Revenue Service. We're supposed to be tariffing instead of taxing the U.S. citizens and getting our money from overseas. This money's coming from us.
Producers in those countries that's trying to sell to U.S. consumers that is having a less of an income that's coming from it. What we do know,
right? Well, because
wait a second, I just realized this. It's not the export manufacturer that's paying this tax. The import country pays the tax. So if we're tariffing these people and they're trying to sell to U.S. consumers, they get screwed. And so eventually they'll just want to come move to the U.S. So that's going to be that's the gamble. But in the short term, we're paying the fucking tax. Holy shit.
What we do know without a doubt is that this president is much more focused on Main Street than he is on Wall Street. He has said that time and time again. He is fighting for those people who have been overlooked for such a long time.
Mr. Chairman, Larry Summers, the former.
Bro, this guy's a fucking moron. Listen, if prices are going to go up and consumer goods are going to get inflated and we're going to be the ones paying the tax, that's Main Street, buddy. I mean, clearly it's going to be the companies here that are receiving the goods that are going to be paying that tax, but they're essentially just going to pass that on to us. So how the fuck you care about Main Street? I guess, I mean, look, in the long term kind of play, if this works out, because this is still a gamble, then companies don't want to do business overseas and then import to the US because they're going to have to pay that, or they're going to have to just lose money on that tariff every single time. And they'll eventually just build factories here like Hyundai and let's say Sony and all these different companies will build factories in America. And that's what they're going to use to sell to US customers. So like most of the Teslas that are sold to US customers here are made in America. And it just makes more sense instead of having like 7 or 8 different countries touch the car before it gets to the consumer. But if that doesn't work out, then we just all paid a hefty ass tax, made a lot of new enemies, and just did not make did not boost productivity at all.
Treasury Secretary is saying at this point that he expects you could see 2 million job losses because of the downturn and potential recession being caused by these tariffs at this point.
I think he's completely wrong. And
that's not what Scott Bessent, we played the Scott Bessent clip yesterday. He said there's no reason why we should have a recession. He said if everything goes as planned and if the balance of trade between the money we're bringing in tariffs and then the new production that we're kind of seeing in America and onshoring, if that balance is kind of evening itself out and balancing out at a steady pace, there should be no reason we see a recession. That's what Scott Bessent said. I hate these people, man. We're on CNBC, of course. This is what I get.
In fact, there's been more than $1.5 trillion of new investment from private companies that's planning to come into the United States to invest in new manufacturing. I think, in fact, there will be millions of new jobs instead of less jobs, because the tariff policies have worked for every other country in the world. They'll work for us. They were very successful in the early 1900s. We saw that before we even had a federal income.
Did you say the early 1900s? Bro, this man says one more thing. This is who they elect, by the way. This is the head of the fuck, you know what I'm saying? Like the class president. Remember the class president? Remember how much fun that person was? Just an absolute joy. Definitely had his finger on the pulse of, of what everybody, wanted. You know what I'm saying? He kind of had his finger on the pulse. No, not at all. Completely out of touch. That's what I remember from those folks who ran for those positions. And that's who ends up in these, in politics. It's the class president. We got Bloomberg Live. Who is this?
Android Auto, hearing all sorts of good things.
All right. I can do this.
And Android are doing.
We got Tom
for your
Keene.
car, for your listening to Bloomberg Surveillance. Good morning on Sirius XM as well. 99.1.
All right.
State 2 of testimony on Capitol Hill for U.S.
you
Trade
for playing.
Representative Jameson Greer. He'll be
All right. Let me see what we
in
have
front of the
here.
Ways and Means Committee today, answering questions about President Trump's tariffs. Join us now, Ways and Means Chairman.
I think this tax bill is going to be a pretty big deal as well. So this is something definitely.
The cost of President Trump's tax plan rising with every new proposal from Republican lawmakers. Robert Frank is going to tell us why.
All right, it's 9:30. We have the market open. Let's see if we get this correction back down to our entry price. We're looking for as close to a double bottom as we can get. Even if, maybe a little bit lower, but I'm going to wait for the market to break through the zone and then recover back above. That'll give us the absolute best entry. All right. So, market open, no rush to enter trades right now. It's going to be about 20, maybe 30 minutes. Let the market settle out, and then hopefully we'll get that precision entry.
The bond market may be the biggest risk to the president's tax bill.
Good morning, Joe. Well, the potential costs of the new tax bill, they are soaring from about $4 trillion to over $8 trillion. Extending the 2017 tax cuts would cost about $4.5 to $5 trillion, just that piece of it over the next 10 years. You add to that President Trump's new plan. So no tax on Social Security, that's $1.4 trillion. No taxes on overtime pay, that's about $900 billion. No taxes on tips, that could be anywhere from $100 to $500 billion. And then raising the SALT cap from 10,000 to 25,000, that's billions more. You add it all up, that would be about $7 to $8 trillion. And that money not only would raise the debt, but also the interest costs on that debt. So without an offset in cost, The Peterson Institute estimates that the interest on the debt would raise that total to over $9 trillion. Now, to fund all that, the government's going to need to issue more debt, and that more supply of debt could bring higher rates. More debt means bond investment.
They don't have to issue more debt because we're actually making money for once, right? Because we actually have people who know about money. And so what they were doing before is like we literally just had a deficit. So imagine like your monthly budget, you just didn't have money for your car bill and your light bill. And what you could do is like literally just open up a new credit card. And we were just doing that every single time. And so they're like, well, the only way that we could finance that, we can finance that tax bill is by issuing more debt. That's not necessarily true. We could actually increase revenues and then cut spending, which is what Doge is focused on, the cutting the spending part. And then Trump right now with these tariffs is focused on onshoring manufacturing and kind of boosting GDP and then deregulating so that we can also boost production here. So that's how you're supposed to be running your household budget. You're not supposed to be opening new credit cards to finance the interest on the old credit card, to finance the interest on the old credit card. You're supposed to get out of it by spending less, making more, finding new ways to make more, and finding better and smarter ways to spend less, and over time paying it down. It's going to be a tough road, but guess what? Life is tough. You got to do the right things.
Investors will also demand higher yields to take that added risk. You boil it all down, the CBO estimates that every 1% increase in debt to GDP adds 2 basis points to long-term rates. So debt to GDP expected to rise 34 basis points over the next 10 years as a result of this tax plan. So that would add an implied 68 basis points in higher rates. We've seen these rates blow out over the past 24 hours. Some of that may be China selling, some of it may be the hedge funds. I think your point earlier is spot on. But I think also as the deficit hawks.
I think it's people getting out knowing that rates aren't going to get any higher. And so if rates go down, so will the premium on your bonds, right? And so it's probably in your best interest to sell these bonds before the interest rates go down. So that's probably why we're seeing selling. Also, I think that once the tariffs, really started getting into effect, and now we're starting to see negotiations and trade wars and stuff, and it's really not as bad as everybody thought. This is not as chaotic as it was in 2016, 17, 18. I think we're seeing a relief bounce. And so if the party's back on and the sentiment has shifted from risk off back to risk on, then you would get out of these, these safe haven assets or these like risk off assets like bonds, and you would try to jump into cryptos and stocks. And so if there's a sell-off right now in the bond market, yes, there is a signal there about inflation and about potential interest rate projections, but really I just think it's about risk sentiment overall. And I think that as those bonds continue to fall, we're going to see stocks have this rebound because investors are ready to get back in the game and get back into risk assets.
In the House are losing ground in this battle over reducing the cost of this tax plan. I think bond investors are also clearly paying attention to that.
I mean, that's the opposite of a virtuous cycle.
Yeah, because more debt, higher yields increases the cost of servicing that debt, and then it just starts to spiral. Exactly, that's what people are worried about.
The thing that you hear President Trump or his acolytes, in terms of talking about the first term was 2017 Tax Act. So one of the basic tenets.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that we're probably not going to get a retracement back to this zone, but I have faith. I trust the system more than anything else. And so I'll be patient. If we don't get that trade, then we have the retest for shorts all the way up at the top of the range. So either way, I am looking for one more retest of that support so we can buy it up. And hopefully in the next maybe 20 minutes, maybe 20, 30 minutes, we'll get that correction.
And we've talked about it before, that if you cut taxes, you're going to get more revenue from growth. That's the whole idea. So Have you heard Trump himself say we might let the top rate go back to 39.6?
No, he said it, according to two reports now, at a meeting with Republicans. Lindsey Graham said, okay, you say everything's on the table. Would you consider raising rates on high earners? Not the wealthy, but high earners. That's a big important distinction.
Yeah.
And he apparently said, yeah, I consider that. I consider everything. Remember, in 2016 on the campaign trail, he said, I think we need to raise rates on the high earners. It's time. Remember, he said that. And remember, the 39.6 to 37 that was part of 2017, that only became because there was a big reception at Mar-a-Lago right after they announced Saul was going to be part of the plan. And all his New York friends were at that reception and say, you cannot do this without some kind of offset on top rates. So it was only because Gary Cohn, Larry Kudlow, other people around him said, if you're going to kill people with salt, especially at the high end, you've got to have an offset. It was at the last minute they did that. I would not be surprised, given how politically popular it is to raise rates on the high earners. Plus, Trump and his friends, they don't pay ordinary income rates.
Right.
It's only chumps
real
who
estate,
pay
yeah.
ordinary income rates.
Got all the
W2.
partnerships.
So they've got
And that's the whole problem, is that you're not actually taxing the ultra wealthy. The ultra wealthy don't make money. We were just talking about this the other day. Like, rich people don't generate income. They're not paying ordinary income tax. They own assets and then they borrow off of those assets. And so they're basically, debt is tax-free. So instead of generating income and paying ordinary income tax. So if they're going to raise the top line marginal tax rate to 40%, I think it's going to be like if you're making 250K and above. So really, like dentists, doctors, lawyers, engineers, like those folks are going to get screwed, but they're not fucking Elon, bro. They're not sitting on $1 billion in stock or something like that. So I just don't understand what the point of that is. Why would, like, those specific jobs and careers we need to incentivize more of? Because right now there's a shortage in each one of those categories. And so that don't make no sense. And fucking Lindsey Graham, when the hell are we gonna get rid of Lindsey Graham? We got rid of Pelosi. Now I'm just waiting for Schumer, Lindsey Graham, and a few other folks to hit the hay. When are we gonna get rid of him?
got the partnerships, they've got
But that's
real
saying that
estate
it's self-serving.
appreciation,
But
they've got all this fun stuff.
That's philosophically going against everything that was the reason. The reason.
It's also funny how they're talking about yields being down, bond yields being down, then you just see this ticker over here and everything is up. You have the 2-year, the 5-year, the 10-year, and the 30-year. You have all the short-term and long-term rates just like glowing green, and they're just like bond rates are dropping.
We're doing this is because it will generate more and it will cause.
Yeah, that retest is starting to seem less and less likely, folks. So, like, the next retest, if this thing doesn't come back to the Asia lows, would look like this. Just track the waves. Here's the beginning of the trend. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have the release. Okay, so it'll come up, hit the lows of Tokyo session from yesterday, or sorry, 2 days ago, come back in for a correction to Asia session highs, jump up probably to the 88.6 of this high, and then that's where we're going to see a release. And the only trade here that's even worth me entertaining is going to be the shorts at the top. So missed it. Trying to be too accurate. Missed it by a few points. But it's okay. We'll find a few more opportunities. I might scalp the shorts here. Like, price is going to break through, come back down, retest, give us 2 or 3 candles. You just capture those 2 or 3 candles real quick and hop out. That's a possibility. But yeah, shorts at the top of the range probably seem like the best idea. See if we just hit reverse real quick. Oh, easy.
Yo, Roy, can I have a question for you?
Talk to me.
All of a sudden, you're kind of watching the market take off.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit here and just cry tears,
I know,
like
I know, I know.
pain on your
So,
mental.
if you had money in like stocks or like ETFs or like even 401ks, and obviously as the market's kind of like doing its thing right now, what would be the best place for people to put their money? Should people pull out and wait for like a better option to put it back into the market? Or should
No.
they hold through it, or should they? What should they do?
So I'm gonna say something that's gonna discourage just about everyone here who's day trading, but
Yeah.
99% of day traders underperform the market, meaning just holding and not touching it. I'm talking about professional hedge funds too. The whole hedge fund game is them trying to beat the benchmark. And the benchmark is you own the stock market index and then you just don't touch it. You're making 7%, for example. So the best strategy that most people will have is just do not touch it. So here's a phrase to help everyone remember. You guys get this? It's about, oh wait, sorry. It's not about timing the market. It's about time in the market. Huh? That's what I used to tell my clients at Merrill all the time. If you miss out on the top performing the 15 best days in the stock market, your returns are usually half of what they should be. So if you try to time it and then you just miss a few of those like really, really big days, you're significantly cutting into your results. Does that make sense, Bryce?
Yeah, completely. It completely makes sense for sure. And this is more, even talking like specifically for like, my father's situation he's in, where he
Mhm.
does have a bunch of stuff in the market. So it's basically to hold through it is the best move
Always,
always, always. And
always
that's
hold
what I
through it.
basically told him. So
Now
that's good to
wait, now real quick, Bryce, what you do is like if you kind of have control over the 401k or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you can change your allocations during these times. And
Uh-huh.
so like, while the market's crashing this heavy and while it's this low, maybe I'll increase my allocation for stocks and I'll like reduce my allocation to bonds.
Okay.
Kind of
Yeah.
at my age, I'd go like 90-10 instead of 80-20, right?
Right, right.
If someone's kind of near retirement, they'd be the other way around. They'd probably be like 80% bonds, 20% stocks. Maybe they'd go 70-30 just to make sure they take advantage of this next like bull run.
For sure, for sure. And for someone who's younger, just hold that and deal with it. You'll be fine.
Go get a second job and put more in.
Yeah, yeah,
When you're
yeah,
young,
yeah.
dude, you gotta
For
get
sure.
aggressive. There's no
Yep.
diversification when you're young. You gotta
Absolutely.
concentrate.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You a G. You a true G, Roy. I appreciate it.
My guy, appreciate the question for real. It was a solid question. This is
Yeah.
the type of stuff, man. People just out here talking about some bro. When GJ fall, I'm like, bro, why can't you guys be more like Bryce? Man, I really think there's going to be positive outcomes out of this still. This guy on CNBC doesn't seem like he knows a lot. I like you, Chancellor. Bonus points. What is this Martial Law Insurrection Act news I'm hearing about? What? Martial law? Is Trump declaring martial law? What the fuck? Hold on. Let me see. The Asbury Park Press, Gabriella. Newsweek, the Daily Beast, Pink News, Gabriella. Did you really just get me on here on Google for some TMZ tier news? People are feeding fear about martial law being imposed. Do I have any knowledge about this? Let's see. Yeah, Newsweek is coming in with the fact check, guys. Everybody, step aside. We can all rest assured we're going to get the most accurate information here. All right, hold on. Let's see what this is, Gabby. Okay, let me see what this is. The fuck is Pink News? Office of Justice, Britannica. Britannica. Something about this just seems like a fucking psyop. This sounds like a propaganda campaign. James Carville. All right, this is definitely a propaganda campaign. Declaring martial law on what? Is there a protest somewhere? What the fuck's going on? Huh? 90 days of the date, proclamation, invoked the Insurrection Act of 1807, 20 executive orders. Uh, this is coming from a now deleted post, a now deleted video on TikTok by Aja Kai, pointed to the Department of Defense. What the fuck are we talking about here? The unfounded social media. How do you write this many words about something that's not real? That didn't, you're just saying like it's the unfounded social media claims. All right. Anyways, if there's a fucking a protest somewhere, go get a job, people. That's all I'm gonna say. If you got enough time on your hands to be out there yelling at a fucking brick wall, you got too much time. All right. It's a luxury. It's a first world problem. He said, please no news from TikTok. Tia, everybody knows you get your news from TikTok, man. I saw you on there scrolling, man. I saw you doing the dance. All right, people. So let's see what we got. Nice rejection. 12 minutes. So I'm going to stick around for another 12 minutes until the hour candle closes. All right. The trade is still valid. I'm not wrong, people. I'm just early. Just like yesterday's trade, that double top, we sold it right at the top. I did jump out early. I did have pain on your imagine that. Imagine the scene, people. Walk through this with me. Pain. It's the name of this interpretive dance right here. Just pain. Episode 1. Just a look of pain on your mentor's face. Just watching this thing melt straight to the ground, along with my dignity. All right, and then it hit the 88.6 from the lows where we had the buy zone, and I bought it up, and everything was good and well, and all the balance was good in the universe, and happily ever after. Now, I was trying to be too accurate, missed this trade by a few points. Am I banking on the retest? Yes. Is it probably going to happen after we're off the stream so I don't get the credit and I don't get to say I told you so? Probably. Am I going to cover it all in the Chart Addicts group, the VIP group chat? 100%. Guaranteed. All right. If you've taken the masterclass before, click the link in the description. Make sure to check your email for the promo code. If you guys were a previous VIP member, check your email. We got a surprise for you guys. To everybody else, check out our website. Subscribe to the newsletter so you guys are up to date on everything that we offer, everything that we're doing, promotions and partnerships that we have going on with FX Summit, FX Replay, Apex Funded Trader. If you guys want a funded account, click the link in the description below. Use promo code Chart Addicts. You guys can use promo code Chart Addicts on TradingView, on the Chart Addicts website, FX Summit, Apex, FX Replay. It's all promo code Chart Addicts. All right. We're going to stick around here 10 more minutes until the 30-minute candle closes and see if we get a break above these highs and a closure, or if this thing rejects back down, we have a massive wick. Okay. If we close above the highs, that's a bullish sign. So we'll have closure above the highs. Then we'll see a correction and go. If we have a closure below the highs and this thing forms a wick, then this could be a sign that we have a little bit lower to go. All right, the only thing that's keeping this reversal intact right now is the higher lows being formed. And as we kind of scroll into the lower time frames here, we have higher highs getting formed and higher lows getting formed. So as long as that stays intact, this thing has room to the upside. If we close below this low, then, sellers are back in control. It's that simple. All right, let's see what else we got here. I don't really want to hear from James Greer. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see if we can actually. Oh, Caroline Levitt. What happened to her? All right. We're gonna play the first half of this because we already played the second half, and this is where she talks about Iran. She talks about China, and talks a little bit more about, I think, South America and Israel.
You guys ready? Great. Good afternoon, everybody. How are we? Good to see you all. I have a few announcements off the top today. On April 14th, President Trump will welcome President Bukele of El Salvador for an official working visit here at the White House. They will discuss El Salvador's partnership on using their Supermax prison for Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gang members, and how El Salvador's cooperation with the United States has become a model for others to work with this administration. On April 17th, President Trump will welcome Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy for an official working visit at the White House as well. The president's thoughts also remain with the families and communities experiencing devastating loss from the severe storms and flooding affected several states across the central U.S. President Trump.
Yo, prayers up to all y'all. If anybody on this stream or hears this stream that's dealing with that or has family out there, send them our best wishes, and yeah, wishing them all our best.
Approved emergency declarations for Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee, allowing FEMA to provide federal assistance like equipment and resources to support state and local emergency response officials who are leading this response on the ground. Last night, the Supreme Court delivered a massive legal victory to the Trump administration and allowed us to continue removing foreign terrorist invaders under the Alien Enemies Act. This was a smackdown to a rogue left-wing, low-level district court judge who have relentlessly tried to stop President Trump from using his core constitutional powers as head of the executive branch and as commander-in-chief. The highest court in the land made it clear that the President of the United States has the power to protect our homeland and forcibly remove foreign terrorists who pose a grave threat to families and communities. Thank you to the Supreme Court for upholding the rule of law and protecting the Constitution. Our message to the monster Tren de Aragua and MS-13 terrorists still hiding illegally inside our country is clear. Deport yourself now, or you will be locked up and sent back to your home country. On another matter.
Bro, she got fired, man. Bro, that was a threat. That was a promise. Turn yourself in, or we're coming to the MS-13, one of the most brutal gangs that's existed in this country. I like her, man. She got spunk. She got that it. Dead at the camera. But there's risks involved in these jobs, man. You have your family and extended family and friends. That's why they need Secret Service protection, because you're taking a personal risk to be out here publicly being the face and the voice. Now, I say don't shoot the messenger. She meant that.
The historic Liberation Day announcement last week by President Trump made it very clear that the era of American economic surrender is over. President Trump is no longer going to allow American workers and companies to be ripped off at the hands of foolish trade practices that shipped away millions of high-paying jobs and hollowed out communities across the country. It's America first, all the way. And despite fear-mongering by the media, the world is clearly responding to President Trump's approach. Just yesterday, President Trump held a bilateral meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here at the White House. The Prime Minister pledged to immediately eliminate America's trade deficit with Israel and remove their trade barriers. Israel's proactive approach should serve as a model for the rest of the world. Also yesterday, the president spoke with Japan's Prime Minister, who wants to negotiate as well. The president also spoke to the acting president of South Korea this morning. He has tasked Secretary Besant and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer to lead these talks. In total, since the Liberation Day announcement, nearly 70 countries have already reached out to the president to begin a negotiation. Countries are falling over themselves to reform their unfair trade practices and free open their markets to our country. Why? Because these countries greatly respect President Trump in the sheer power of the American market. These countries realize they've gotten filthy rich over the past few decades by imposing substantial tariffs on American-made products and ridiculous non-monetary barriers to block out American industry. The jig is up. Past American presidents sat by and let this happen, but President Trump stood up for our country, and he is saying no more. The president's message has been simple and consistent from the beginning. To countries around the world, bring us your best offers, and he will listen. Deals will only be made if they benefit American workers and address our nation's crippling trade deficits. America does not need other countries as much as other countries need us, and President Trump knows this. He's going to use the leverage.
I'm not worried about the wholesale inventories print that's coming out, because all the tariffs are going to reflect on next month, like an early indicator to see how well wholesalers prepared for the tariffs. I would expect them to be up, so to have purchased a lot of inventory in advance prior to the tariffs taking effect. And so that would mean that we actually have a pretty good amount, we have a pretty good amount of supply in the country right now to kind of last us the next couple months as these tariffs take effect. So let's see if the wholesalers prepped accordingly. If they did, we'll probably see a pretty good bullish run as kind of like an optimistic, oh, good job, wholesalers. You guys actually prepped for doomsday.
Of our markets and our country to the advantage of the people he was sworn in to represent. On the other hand, countries like China, who have chosen to retaliate and try to double down on their mistreatment of American workers, are making a mistake. President Trump has a spine of steel, and he will not break, and America will not break under his leadership. He is guided by a firm belief that America must be able to produce essential goods for our own people and export them to the rest of the world. A strong America cannot be solely dependent on foreign countries for our food, medicines, and critical minerals. And America must always maintain a robust defense supply chain. Reprioritizing and strengthening our manufacturing industry are essential national and economic security issues of the utmost importance to President Trump. By focusing on supercharging the onshoring of American manufacturing, the president is already delivering on his promise to usher in an economic golden age for our country. Just look at Friday's jobs report, which smashed expectations for the second straight month. The American economy added 228,000 jobs, nearly 100,000 more jobs than economists predicted, and the fourth highest month for private payroll growth in the past 2 years. There was also a sharp increase in transportation, construction, and warehousing employment. And in just 11 weeks, President Trump has secured more than $1.5 trillion in private sector investment. This is $500 billion more than Joe Biden secured in his entire term.
The unemployment rate went up. So I guess there were some increases in some key sectors. Maybe this is including government jobs, actually. There's tons of government layoffs. I'll have to look through it in detail here. Maybe we'll do that on tomorrow's stream. All right, we have about a minute left until the wholesale inventories. This is a low impact event, but again, the forecast is looking at an increase here. Especially compared to the previous. We're looking at a 0.4% month-over-month increase in final wholesale inventories. We might actually get 0.4 or above, just because I just think wholesalers were preparing for the tariffs and hopefully stocking up, buying their inventory prior to the tariffs taking effect. So we'll see how this plays in. I don't think we're going to get too big of a reaction, but we'll see.
This record-breaking private sector investment will create roughly 350,000 American jobs and counting. If you add up all of the investment pledges from foreign governments, President Trump has secured an incredible $5 trillion in total investments already. In the months ahead, President Trump's pro-growth economic agenda will be fully realized, the largest deregulatory effort in American history.
All right, so we just had that 30-minute candle closure. Let's see if we get this retest back inside the range. I think that we get this aggressive push here and then a retest back inside the range. It'll probably retest about 50% and then continue to the upside. So let's see how the market reacts. All right, news is pending. Came out slightly lower than expected, 0.3%. Let's see if we can actually get the full report here. Monthly wholesale trade. All right, let's take a look at this in real time. So market is pumping. Not really sure why, but we'll take a look here.
History is underway. Unnecessary, burdensome, costly red tape is being eliminated by this entire federal government every day, driving down costs and massively boosting small businesses. So far, President Trump's deregulation effort has already saved Americans more than $180 billion, equivalent to $2,100 per family of 4. The president's drill baby drill energy agenda, which he will discuss later this evening in the East Room, is capitalizing on the abundance of natural resources under our feet to generate more affordable electricity, cheap gas, and quality new jobs. All of this will combine to end the Biden-imposed cost of living crisis that's absolutely crushed American families. Under President Trump, the American energy industry will lead the globe over the next century, delivering lower prices and significantly strengthening our country's economic position. At the president's direction, Republicans in Congress are working quickly to pass one big, beautiful bill, which will also include the largest tax cut in American history. As President Trump has said, the House must pass this budget resolution quickly. Here in our new media seat today, we have Jasmine Wright, the White House reporter for Notice. Notice is a nonprofit. And
All right, I'm just looking through this list real quick of the inventories here. Based on sales and inventories, it looks like there's a little bit of correlation between the materials that are getting taxed from mostly from Canada and from China. I'm looking at automotive sales went up between January, February, and they're down from last year, but they did start to pick up here. I'm guessing folks were buying cars prior to the taxes or the tariffs going into effect, because then all foreign-made cars are going to be more expensive. We have metals, electrical, hardware, and machinery. Those are some of the exports that we have with China that we actually send to them. Drugs and apparel, massive increase in inventory for drugs. Looks like we're stockpiling here. Everything else, not too different from last year. Yeah, it doesn't look like there was too much, and I really feel like there's going to be a revision to this. This kind of seems like there's some sloppy reporting here. I think next month's report is going to include a revision of this month, and ideally we get some more accurate numbers here.
Site, which launched in early 2024. They've gained millions of readers across the country since. Newsroom's goal is both to inform readers and train the next generation of politics and policy journalists. They also partner with state newsrooms and to give local communities more knowledge of what their representatives are doing in Washington, D.C. With that, please kick us off, Jasmine.
Thanks so much, Caroline. A couple questions for you. The first one being, can you explain the White House's evolution from this is not a negotiation on tariffs to countries should pitch us and start negotiations on tariffs?
As the president said yesterday, Jasmine, both things can be true at the same time. And it is a non-negotiable position that the United States has faced a national security and economic crisis because of the unfair trade practices by countries around the world. As for the president, I have maintained this position. The entire administration has always said that President Trump is willing to pick up the phone and talk. And the president met with his trade team this morning, and he directed them to have tailor-made trade deals with each and every country that calls up this administration to strike a deal. And listen, and each and every one of these trade deals should be tailored and unique based on that country's markets, based on that country's exports, the imports here in the United States of America. What makes the most sense for the American worker and for our industry? The president is focused on putting America first.
So was the evolution not factored in or determined by kind of the tumult in the stock market? Was that not a part of the consideration to start making these negotiations and deals?
Again, I would reject that there was an evolution. On day one, we had said that the president will always pick up the phone for other nations and other companies that call this administration. The president always has a listening ear. And it's a non-negotiable fact that America has faced a national security and economic crisis for many decades, and President Trump is just the first to address this.
And then my last question, how will negotiations change how much revenue the White House is planning to make from the tariffs?
Well, that has yet to be seen, but as the president said, the reciprocal tariffs, which will continue to go in effect as these deals are negotiated and ongoing, will generate trillions of dollars in revenue to the United States. And this is twofold. The president wants to onshore jobs here to the United States of America. He wants to boost our manufacturing industry. He also wants to tackle these crippling deficits with almost every single country around the world.
Jackie. Thank you, Caroline. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, warned that some of these negotiations might take up to months, that we could be doing this through April, May, and into June. And then you had Kevin Hassett say it's going to take a lot for the president to put his signature on the line, because he wants to make sure there's a good deal for America. Is the president operating on any sort of a timeline or deadline where he wants this completed by?
Well, we always move at Trump speed here at the White House, which is incredibly fast. I know you all know that from covering this White House day to day. The president likes to get things done, but he's very much focused on ensuring that these deals are good for the American worker. They are good for American manufacturing. And again, that they tackle these crippling deficits with these countries. All options are on the table for each country. But again, these are going to be tailor-made deals. They are not going to be off the rack deals, as the president has called it. And he has part of this effort. So that includes Secretary Besant and our National Economic Director, Kevin Hassett. It also includes Secretary Lutnick, Peter Navarro, the entire trade team, Jamison Greer, who was on the Hill today, everybody who was involved in this incredible, fair, reciprocal trade agenda will continue to be involved in negotiating these deals.
And yesterday, Goldman Sachs put out a research note. It put the odds of a recession at 45% within the next 12 months, up from 35%. But Peter Navarro guaranteed last night, no recession. Does the president agree with him on that? I know the president in the past has been leery of making definitive statements on that.
I can speak for the president, and I can speak for the optimism that he sees in our economy every day. Again, when you talk about the massive deregulatory efforts that are happening across the board, when you talk about how oil prices are down, gas prices.
Looks like we're getting that correction, and let's see. I doubt we'll get a correction all the way back to the bottom, but that's the only condition I'll take the trade. We'll most likely come back inside the Asia range. Probably 88% of this low. Damn, I'm trying to get rid of this. All right. About 88% of this low, which would put us 16,900. Kind of keep it simple. I'm just going to round up, and then we'll do a reverse fib just to go ahead and verify this. That should be the 61. It is. Oof. Don't get better than that. All right, clean this up. So this 16,900 zone right here, this is probably what we're going to see in terms of a correction. So most people are kind of looking at a break and retest scenario here, because as the market is building these aggressive impulses, folks have been watching the market since the morning. They're going to be looking for a break and retest. Typically, the market is going to, and this is what, you know, we cover all this in the class. It'll come down to the previous low, so the Asia session lows, and then have a continuation. For me, I don't like those continuation trades because you can see how high this is compared to where the stop loss needs to be. Ideally, the best entries are down here. And so entering that far away from the entry, this is damn near my TP1. Right? So it's an option on the table. If you guys are feeling risky, but that personally, I am not going to take that trade. I'd much rather wait for the market to correct all the way back down to this 886. Okay. Hope that's clear, everybody. I'm going to hop off here in about a second. If you guys have any last questions, go ahead and throw them in the chats. If not, Chart Addicts members, great to see you guys on here. Sam, Sandra, T, Todd, Roman, Bryce, Christine, Two Step, everybody who's on the Zoom. Great to see you guys on here. If you guys are on YouTube, make sure to hit like and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And make sure to check out the link in the description to get your trading success on the road. Make sure to contact us for a promo code if you guys got to that link from this live stream. Catch you guys later. Happy and safe trading. Members, I'm going to send all my charts in the Discord chat so you guys have it on there. All right. Take it easy, y'all. Happy and safe trading, everybody. Let me see if there's any questions here. We're good. Todd, Christine. All right. Take it easy, y'all. Peace.